Oh, all right. Welcome to the channel. This is the Ducati Dads. Today we have the Remix Racing Projects, Jeremy, Taubman, and Sabrina. I don't think I actually have your last name. I forgot.
Ryder.
Oh, that's perfect. All right. So in today's we're starting off a little late for November or for October. Each month, we are doing a live stream with the Remix Racing Project to talk about mental health awareness. And just to cut the stigma of mental health so that we're able to talk about it in an open, free environment. And this month, we're talking about like how motorcycles open up our minds. And so first, we're going to start off with a little bit of an introduction. Jeremy, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Jeremy Taubman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Remix Racing Project. I also race in the Super Hooligan National Championship in Moto America. And about 3 years ago, Shayna, my girlfriend, who's also the other co-founder, we decided that we wanted to bring our passion for kind of advocating for mental health and addiction recovery and our participation and passion for motorcycles and racing, bring them together. Initially to kind of create a brave space in the racing paddock to be able to talk about these issues, normalize the conversations, smash the stereotypes, fight the stigma. But the message really resonated with so many people, not just inside the motorcycle and racing community, but obviously beyond that community as well. And so a year ago, we launched Remix Recovery, which kind of transcends just, mental health in the motorcycle community and really to a much broader audience, so that we could reach people whether they're part of this community or not. We run a network of peer-led support groups for people who are surviving mental health and substance use problems, whether or not they have any interest in motorcycles. That coincided with the publishing of our book, Remix Recovery, Leading a Brave Space. And it was through Remix Recovery that we met Sabrina, who wanted to become part of the community and then also help contribute to it. And so she took a training to become a certified peer facilitator. I'm going to let her tell you the rest, but it's really been an amazing journey, and I'm just so honored, Tim, that you're having us on Ducati Dads to share about it.
And we are so happy that you're willing to give us a chance to help you spread your message.
Thank you.
All right, Sabrina, what do you do for the Remix Racing Project?
So personally, I have never been on a motorcycle. I will admit that, even though my last name is Ryder. But I struggle with mental health side of things. So anxiety, depression, a lot of alphabet things tied together. So through Kaiser, I've done a lot of different group therapy. And every time we lost our peer facilitator or our regular facilitator or even our space. So it was this ongoing, I would love to get help. Where do I go? There's no one to help. So a friend of mine who is a peer facilitator for Remix reached out and said, hey, we have this thing that's, just peer facilitation. So it's just support, but we never have group anymore because it just never got back up and running. Kaiser never filled the positions. And as patients, we suffered. So when you have no place to go, what do you do? And she said, I've got this really great group. I'd like you to come and, kind of check it out. And after the first, 2 visits, I was like, yep, I'm in. There's so many different people that are there, and it's such a diverse group that it was just similar to walking into one of the therapy groups that I was already a part of, but it has a different vibe because it's peer facilitated. So there's already like a relief of tension when you walk in, that there's not this person watching over you and, you know, maybe writing stuff down that could go in your file if you say the wrong thing. And
Right.
it clicked. It works with my schedule and with the people there, and it makes sense. These are, you know, not necessarily hard to grasp theories. They're things that it's like once you practice it, oh, that's muscle memory.
Right. No, that's amazing that you were able to find the support and the resources that you needed through Remix, even when, because I remember when my brother had passed away, I was talking to Kaiser, who I have my medical through. Or they were who my provider was, but my insurance that I was using didn't work with Kaiser's insurance thing at the time. And so I ended up having to go through a third party. The frustration of trying to find a mental health provider, where it's like a counselor, a psychiatrist, or whoever to be able to talk to about your issues, and then like just trying to find somebody and then have insurance be able to cover it. And just, it felt like I was jumping through multiple hoops. Eventually, through sheer determination, I found the help that I needed, but there was that frustration. And so I feel you there. So now a lot has happened since the last time that we talked. But Jeremy had some fun. Did you want to talk about that? Because I think that ties into some of our topic today. Oh, look at that. Oh, you're muted. All right, there you
You
go.
think by now, after 5 or 6 years of all of this Zoom stuff, we'd all figure out where the mute button is, and if not, everybody else would figure out how to read lips by now, right? When we're stuck on mute. Anyway, yeah, no, I think the last time that I was on your show, Tim, I was off camera because I was driving back from a race down in at Buttonwillow in kind of central California, and I was driving back and wanted to make sure I got to participate in the episode. I really like this series, Motorcycles and Mental Health. Um, and you know, I had a really good time that weekend. That weekend, the Moto America season had ended, so this was one of our club races. You know, one of the regional races, and I went by myself and brought 3 different bikes. So I was racing 3 different bikes and kind of my own crew chief and pit crew and everything else, and had a pretty successful weekend. I did have one crash, came together with another rider, and it was a low side. For those of you who don't know, that's just kind of a gentle crash where your bike slides out from under you and you go sliding across the asphalt. I have an airbag suit, and the airbag deployed even though it wasn't really necessary. But that meant that a few weeks later, at the next race round that I went to, I wasn't able to get that suit repaired in time, and made the mistake of going on the track with an older suit that didn't have an airbag, and had made a mistake on Friday practice, and blew a turn and was heading toward the tire wall. This was a track that was definitely set up more to keep cars safe than motorcyclists safe, and so was heading toward the tire wall at some ridiculous, like literally breakneck speed, and decided to bail because I couldn't get the bike slowed down enough. And without the airbag suit on, I ended up doing quite a bit of damage to myself. Fractured a whole bunch of ribs, shattered my scaphoid, you know, which is that little bone in your wrist. Even broke a toe. So I've been in recovery mode. That was about 3.5, I guess about maybe 4 weeks ago. So still in recovery mode. Get this thing off on Wednesday. Looking forward to finally getting the cast off, and then getting into physical therapy mode. I've already been kind of back at the gym and trying to keep my body healthy and my mind clear. But yeah, so it's pretty much the end of the season in terms of riding. But as you probably know, Tim, and I know a lot of your audience knows, that the next year's season starts September, like late summer, early fall of the prior year. So we're full speed ahead, getting ready for 2026.
That turn there at Buttonwillow, I didn't want to interrupt you, but they just installed a new air fence there on that particular turn, right?
So yeah, so the crash that I got really injured on was at Thunder Hill
Oh,
up in Willows in Northern California. Yeah. The race that I had just finished when I was on your show last was down at the circuit, which is the new track at Buttonwillow. And there had been some concerns. That race that I was in it at the circuit was the first motorcycle race since that track was completed. And there were a lot of concerns about the safety of the track. I think they did a great job, actually. I think, they've got air fences up at places where you're more likely to kind of slide off the track and don't have a lot of runoff. And there's been several races down there so far, and no serious injuries. So I actually think Buttonwillow did a pretty good job hearing the concerns of the motorcyclists, motorcycle clubs, track day companies, and that kind of thing, and made a few modifications after it was first completed to make it safer for motorcyclists. But this was at Thunder Hill, and it was at turn 10. And for people who've never been there, that won't mean anything, but it's essentially a turn that coming downhill really fast into a hard braking zone, and then kind of a cambered 90-degree left turn. And there's not a lot of runoff. At the end of the runoff is a tire wall, so not an air fence. There's no gravel, so nothing to slow you down, just hard packed dirt, kind of pitted dirt and rocks and that kind of thing. So when I blew the turn, I couldn't get the bike slowed or turned enough, and if I didn't bail, I probably would have hit the tire wall, which on a motorcycle it's just like hitting a concrete wall, basically, and I would have done that at 60, 80 miles an hour. So left me with a few choices. So technically, walking away from that was a lot better than what could have happened. So grateful for that, but definitely a lot of the tracks that we race at, for club racing, not the AMA sanctioned Moto America national professional races, but a lot of the more local club races, they're really designed for cars, and they let us put our motorcycles on it, but they're not necessarily designed for safety for bikes, the same way that kind of a lot of the bigger kind of the tracks that we race on with Moto America, and then certainly kind of a lot of the national and international tracks, that have a lot of runoff and gravel and air fences, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and so I'd seen at Buttonwillow that they just put up a new air fence over there that would go and it's like there's a concrete wall and
Yeah.
then the air fence, and for whatever reason they made it really close, and there's been a number of crashes at that turn now that I've seen on social media that I mean the air fence saves a lot of riders from massive injury, and um it's a huge thing that really prevents riders from getting serious injuries. Hold on one second. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties over here. Um,
Yeah, I think you're talking about turn 6. Turn 6 is a pretty slow turn. You actually go up a slight incline to get to it, and then it's a relatively slow turn. There is no runoff. And I think that had always been the big concern when the track was being built, especially for motorcycles. But again, after an incline and then a tight, it's a kind of a hairpin turn. Yeah. And so even if you do crash, there's always the potential for injury, of course, regardless. But with the air fence there, I think it's that was a necessary safety measure, because there's no runoff. Like if you blow the turn, you're gonna have to drop the bike. But again, it's not a particularly fast turn. There are a lot of turns there that are, but there's a little bit more space if you make a mistake. In fact, I remember on the first weekend when I was there, I blew turn 1, which is obviously one of the fastest because it's at the end of the front straight. And I was able to run completely off the track and then rejoin it, I think, turn 3. Yeah, but it's a neat track. It's a fun track.
Yeah, I'm excited. So tying into the low side, I want to pick your brain a little bit before we jump into the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about today. We've got a video, and I don't know if we can pull it up right now, but we got a video that where it was from after one of our track sessions. One of our experienced riders, he's a podium, like he ends up landing on the podium almost every race that he does up here. So he's a very knowledgeable, skilled rider. And he came up and we were talking about different situations and knowing how much brake you can actually put in, like coming into a turn, like off of our front straightaway. I was coming in at close to 180 miles an hour on my bike. And I realized, oh, I've actually got a lot more, like I could go way deeper before I get into the turn. Like I could almost engine brake my way if I wanted to. Even though obviously racing, you want to get on the brakes, but you want to wait as long as you can, get on the brakes and turn in. But we've got
old guy once told me when I first started, he's like, there's gonna be times you're gonna come in this and you think you're gonna not make the corner. Best thing you could do is just fucking tip that son of a bitch in. The worst case, it's gonna low side. Who cares? We'll take that.
Afterwards, we're talking to his name's Jeremy as well. We're talking to him, and now this clip that we'd pulled from this is only around 10 seconds long, but it's got close to 1 million views right now. And in the comments section, there is a lot of people that are either for, like, oh yeah, this is great advice, or against it. Now, what he's talking about is there's going to be times that you're going to come into turns, you're not going to think that you're going to be able to make it, but commit, tilt it in, and go through it, because the worst thing that'll happen will be a low side, and we'll take that. And that's what he was saying. Now, there's obviously a lot more that goes into it. Like if you're coming into a turn hot, you can get on the brakes, try to slow down, go run off, save the bike, don't risk sliding across the ground and potentially taking out other riders. But there is a lot that can be said, but I want to know your thoughts on this. As a pro rider, I really respect, your experience.
I've done it both ways, and I think you pointed out some of the factors that you need to consider. Is are there other riders on the track with you? Are there other riders on the outside? If you try to make the turn, are there some riders on the outside that you're going to take out if you go down? If you lose the front, if you wash the front, you've got a good chance of a low side, and then depending on what the runoff is like, you can still get injured. The bike can still catch and yard sale, get completely destroyed. So it's not a guarantee that it's going to be nice and gentle. If you lose the rear, obviously you risk a high side. So I think it's really a judgment call. The first thing that you're always going to do is you're going to try to get the bike as slowed down as you can, straight up and down. And when my last crash happened, one of the things I was doing is I was working on rear brake techniques. Both to get the bike slowed down and to kind of steady the bike as you're coming into a heavy braking zone. And so, that's the first thing you want to do is try to get the bike slowed down as much as you can while you're straight up and down. And, you're making decisions in split seconds, like just split seconds, and you just have to make a judgment call. And so you don't have time to think, right? You have to make a decision. And, and usually these come down to a binary decision. You either throw it into the turn or you run off the turn and try to get it slowed down enough to safely kind of get off the track and maybe get back on. And that's, you have to decide, but you don't get time to think. And then there's all of the, kind of muscle memory and instinct that comes from doing it a lot and having made the mistake of making the wrong choice. So, I don't think that there's one right answer. You have to consider all of these things. And, again, who else is on the track? am I going to get it slowed down enough that I even have a chance for this? Otherwise, if I'm definitely crashing versus I have a chance to slow it down by running off, then maybe you go with the safer option. But if you go all the way back to the beginning, is what did you do before you got on the track? Did you make sure your bike was in good condition, your tires were in good shape, your brakes were good, your suspension is warmed up? Are you in the right headspace? You got the right gear on? You got high quality gear? Are you prepared to make the wrong choice if you have to make a split decision choice? And I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that. They're thinking, what do I do once it's too late?
It's that I believe that it's the panic that sets in, because
Yeah.
you got the thrill. If you're not an experienced rider, you've got the thrill of, say, my situation, glancing down as I was coming up through this pinch zone, looking down and going, oh boy, I'm moving. There's a turn coming up. And I saw the 3-cone, let off throttle, started getting on the brakes, and now all of a sudden I'm doing 80. I just shut off 100 miles an hour roughly before starting turning in. Now I'm doing 60, and I'm like, oh, all right. And then when I was talking with him, he was like, well, there's going to be times that, you're going to come into a corner and you're going to think you overcooked it. Just lean it, trust the bike, and go on through the turn. Your bike's a lot more capable than you think. Now, the caveat to this is that he did go and tell us this right after the Taste of Racing session. So there was like, it wasn't like a track day. It wasn't a race. And maybe that was what led him to giving that advice. But I think that it more or less came from a racing mindset. That
absolutely. Think about this also, though. So you're coming in to the braking zone, and you've completely loaded your suspension, right? You got all the weight coming down on the front of your suspension. It's fully loaded, and you decide that you're going to go ahead and throw it into the turn. Remember that you're not just turning and you're not just leaning. You're also deciding how much of that brake and at what rate am I coming off the brake to unload the suspension. Because you could do everything else right, but if you let off too quick and you unload the suspension, that's how you're going to definitely wash out your front wheel. So, there's a bunch of little inputs that are necessary to make that turn. And and of course, the people who need to hear somebody talking about this are probably a little less experienced. And so, my suggestion is, rather than wait till you find yourself in that moment of panic, do all the stuff to prepare to make the wrong choice, right? So that's all the stuff you do before you get on the track. And I see Sabrina's head nodding because I know she can hear all kinds of metaphors in this for life, right? And that's what we should probably talk about next. So everything you need to be prepared to make the wrong choice. Life is going to give you choices. You're not going to get them all right. And then the second thing is inch your way toward the limit. Don't start at the limit and then figure out, what do I do if I go over? Inch your way toward it. So, the first time you come into that turn, maybe 180 is a little much, maybe you come in at $150, $160, and maybe you start braking a little earlier and then the next lap. I mean, that's another thing about a circuit course, right? I fell in love with riding on circuit tracks because you get to, even in a 20-minute like track day session, you get to practice the same corner, 6, 7, 8 times, depending on the size of the track, over and over again. So you can brake a little deeper, you can throttle a little earlier, you can play around with the lean angle and the position on the track and the line you're going to take, with the idea that you inch your way to a place where it just feels right and you're going fast, and then you try to turn that into kind of the metronome, kind of consistent routine. And then once you've done that, and then you put it into racing conditions, now you got to consider, everything that changes from lap to lap, including where the other riders are on the track. But that's why, kind of automating so much of that, building it into your kind of routine so that it just becomes automatic, meaning you don't have to think about it. That's what allows you to make those split decisions and get them right more often than get them wrong.
Yeah. So you said that you were talking about some terms that Sabrina was acknowledging. Did you want to go ahead and touch on those? I'm really intrigued about that.
Yeah, well, I think, you've heard me say that I think one of the nice things about merging my passion for mental health and my passion for racing is that there's so many things that we do on a motorcycle and especially on the track that feel like they make such a elegant and perfect metaphor for life. And so I was seeing Sabrina's head nod and wondered if that's maybe what she was thinking about as I was talking about kind of these techniques, everything from preparing in advance to be able to survive making the wrong choice and everything else. But I'd love to hear from Sabrina and see what she's thinking.
So something like this morning, because my girl played her flag football game with her team, and every game we notice, if the other team makes it to the end zone, everybody all of a sudden just shuts down. Morale is gone, color drains from their faces. And we have to remind them that was just one play. You have a whole nother play to go through. And then after that, you still have other quarters to go through. Like, this is not the end of the game. So one mistake, one dropped ball, one misstep, it's not make or break. It sucks. Yeah, it might, take you down a peg or two, but it's not the end all be all. So you have to look at each thing as a retry. So whether that be the next lap on the course, the next play in the game, for me, the next event at work, whatever it is. I like how you kind of said, did you check your whole bike before you hit the track? For me, those are my please skills from my DBT therapy sessions. Like, did I make sure I ate something this morning? Did I get enough sleep? Have I exercised recently? Like, anything in that list that I have not touched on, that's going to be putting me up for I might crash. I might make a wrong turn or make a miscalculation in my brain that day, and all of a sudden my anxiety's peaked or my depression hits or something along those lines. So you have to do those things mentally daily if that's something that you struggle with. You have to, check all your tools. Is everything in proper working order before you hit the track? Because if not, there's a likelihood you could crash. And if you're not protected and you don't have enough stuff in your tool belt, how do you fix that? So most of what you're speaking to does correlate to mental health, because if you're not in the right mindset, just like when you're racing, your objective is most likely going to get skewed somewhere in between because you're thinking of something else or you're calculating somewhere else. That's why it's better to be more present in the moment. How are you supported? For you guys, I guess it would be feeling your bike under you. The support of your weight is on this bike, so you're one with it. For me, it's when I'm having a panic attack at work, I'm feeling my chair underneath me supporting me. So that's where I need to be right now, not 3 hours from now where I could have something screw up, but it may or may not happen. So why am I freaking out about it now? It's just that continuous, where am I at? And are my tools where I need them to be? Or is there something that I could do differently? And if something does go wrong, learn from it and then move forward. The best thing that I was taught when I was working in a veterinary hospital was, at the end of the day, if everyone is still alive, you did nothing wrong.
No, and that is perfect, because there's a metaphor that I was taught when I came from a military background, but when I was a commercial diver and you had you had a full team behind you that you needed to make sure that your life support systems were 100%. Proper planning prevents piss poor performance. Now obviously that's not nice to some people. There's a bad word in there, but overall it means make sure that you have everything lined up prior to doing what you're going to do. And that right there not only prevents poor performance, but it also prepares you mentally, because if you know that everything is set up for success, then you're in a mindset to perform at a higher level. When I was also when I would play like higher level amateur billiards, I made sure that before the day of the tournament that I had all the sleep that I needed, that I was eating. I wanted to make sure that there was nothing that was going to eke on in and affect my mental clarity. Because just like in motorcycle racing and pool, after fundamentals, 90% of it is all mental. Well, and I guess in motorcycle racing, you got to throw another 10% in there for proper bike preparation and make sure your tires and your tire pressures and all your fluids are set up right, your seats bolted down, you know, and, but yeah, I mean, making sure that you're prepared mentally is huge in everything that we do in life, from motorcycle racing to everyday things. I mean, before you leave for work, you want to make sure that you've got gas in your car. All these little things add up, because say you hop into your car and you don't have fuel in it, well, now, and you're running 5 minutes late because something came up. Now you got to run to the gas station, get fuel. And while you're there, you're like, oh, should I get an energy drink? Because now I feel tired. And then when you're rushing into work, you feel like you're really far behind on everything. And it compounds. And then somebody says one thing to you that just kind of sets you off. And now that's all anybody at work's talking about. And this all stemmed from forgetting to get gas in the morning. But
And I work in a setting where that is something that happens quite often, where I could have all of my stuff checked and I'm good to go and get there, and somebody else forgot to get gas and I got to deal with their fault. So it's like, if I have to check my attitude before I leave the house in the morning, I expect that others would do the same. But that's not how it works. Not a perfect world. So it's also, you should expect a little to go wrong, because if everything goes according to plan, that's great. You don't have to use your backup plans. But if you have no backup plan and thing does go wrong, what do you do? So I'm one of those plan for the worst and hope for the best. So I have contingencies on contingencies. That's all the anxiety. But it's one of those things where I'm anticipating something to go a little off to try to throw me off, so that I can either make sure that I'm that much more solid, or kind of like when you play sports. For me, it would be soccer. So when keeper and someone's coming at me with the ball, it's kind of like bring it and challenging you at the point, because I'm set, my stuff's secured. So bring me what you got and let's see how it shakes me or not.
I love that.
yeah, no, that is perfect. So now moving on to our next, moving into this. So after your accident, your recovery, what have you been doing, Jeremy, to mentally like stay, like how do you recover from an accident? I've never like I've low sided once, and it was like a full like slow, it was a low speed, but I went from the top of this adventure bike to the ground pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
I mean, mentally, I was like, I just got to get back on this bike and ride it. Can't be afraid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I've crashed countless times. It's just kind of part of the deal. It's part of what we sign up for. In fact, I tell people, um, you know, I think when you identify as a racer, when you're not just a person who's riding a motorcycle or just riding on the track, but it's just part of who you are, part of your identity in your blood, your DNA, whatever, where you don't feel like you have a choice. You accept that crashing is inevitable. Even getting injured is inevitable. You hope today is not the day, but I don't know that we necessarily race thinking that we hope that we never crash. You just accept that it's inevitable. So all this stuff that we've been talking about, you prepare everything. You prepare your skills and your training, your brain and your body and your bike and your backup plan, your gear, your team, your everything. You're prepared for that because it is just kind of inevitable. And so there's the first thing that always happens to me after a crash is I know that there are a lot of things that can contribute to a crash that are out of my control. That's also just part of the deal, part of what we signed up for. But I can't learn a lot from the stuff I can't control. I could use it as an excuse to not learn, to not change, to not take ownership or accountability, right? I can blame my crash on somebody else or other circumstances or conditions or whatever, but there's no opportunity for learning or growth for that. So even though I know that there's always a lot of contributing factors, what I'm most focused on is what did I do that caused or contributed to my crash? What can I learn from that? Mistakes happen. Really, the goal is to try not to make the same mistake again and again and again, right? Maybe not even a second time if you can avoid it. So that's the first thing. And as soon as I can figure out what did I do that caused or contributed to the crash, what happens for me is I can't wait to get back on the track and put to practice what I just learned, right? So if it was that I took a turn too fast, or if I took the wrong line, or if I allowed myself to get distracted for a moment, or if maybe it was something with setup, bike setup, whatever it is, I want to try to address that. I want to go out there and I want to practice what I learned and reinforce what I learned, which will make it less likely that I'm going to ever make that mistake again. There's also, that fear factor of crashing, especially when there's some injury involved, even if it's just the injury of ego, pride and ego. I really believe that if you are going to ride and race again, then the sooner you face that and get through it and get over it, the better. You can't get over that just by obsessing about it and not putting in practice what you learned. So I want to get back on the bike and back on the track as quick as possible. There's a lot of crashes where you can do that. There's a lot of crashes where you can't either because the bike's too damaged or your body's too damaged or whatever. But if I have the opportunity in Moto America, you can pick your bike back up, and if the bike is running, you can get back on the track. At a club race, when your bike touches the ground, you're done. And at a track day, you might be done for the rest of the day until they'll come pick it up. But anyway, that's the first thing I do is what did I do wrong? What can I learn from that? And how quickly can I put to practice what I just learned? Then there's the big crashes, the crashes that result in serious injury. And every time I'm injured, I have a lot of friends and loved ones that aren't part of the motorcycle or racing community. And one of the first things they used to ask me is, are you reconsidering whether you want to keep riding or racing? Now they don't bother asking me anymore because the answer is always the same. Is, part of what drives my healing and recovery process, part of what drives my commitment to doing everything the doctor tells me and all of my physical therapy is because I want to get back on the bike and on the track as soon as possible. I don't think I've certainly had crashes where I wonder, what am I doing? Like, this is some wild stuff and maybe I'm too old for this and maybe it's whatever, but that's a fleeting thought. And when I've said it to Shayna, to my girlfriend, that, what am I doing? She looks at me with a smirk on her face, like she knows that as soon as I can, I'm going to be back on the bike and back on the track. And again, it's because I want to get over whatever fear led to that second thought. And I got to tell you, people can judge me for how I make those decisions and for my lifestyle. I'm used to that. It's a pretty stigmatized sport that we participate in. But I got to tell you, I'm so grateful to have a passion that I'm willing to take risks for. I am so grateful to have a passion that I'm willing to get injured for. And I don't want to, and I try to avoid it as much as I can. But to have something that you love that much in your life, that you're willing to go to those lengths to be able to do it and enjoy it, do to come back from a crash. The first thing is, what did I do? What could I learn? And how quickly can I get back there and put it to practice?
That's awesome. And that is some really good information. I mean, just in life, like I just, I had it, but, in general for life, if you fall down, learn from your mistakes, get back up, hard charge, don't stop. You've got to get back on the horse and keep going. There's a lot of things in life that come up, and you gotta be able to learn from it. Whether it's losing your job for whatever reason, a friendship or a relationship that isn't going well, you've got to be able to slow down, look at everything that's going on, and assess it and go, all right, what did I potentially do here? How can I learn from this? Apply it and go. And there's lots of situations where that mindset from sliding down the track, whether it's a small oopsie or a big oopsie, you can turn around and apply to your everyday life. Sabrina, did you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. A lot of it comes back to people not wanting to take accountability for where they could improve. I admit that was me for the longest, but I'm also now very much where can I improve myself? So if that means learning a new skill or owning up to something that I didn't do, even though I know I could have, those are things that it's like you were saying, yes, mistakes are inevitable. They're going to happen, but how do you come back from them? Do you sit there and ruminate on, oh, woe is me and that sucked? Or do you, okay, now we've learned this from that, and next time we can come back that much stronger, that much better? And a lot of times it's the simple fact of people don't like knowing that they did something wrong. They don't want to take accountability. And because I know that was me for so long, once I started holding myself accountable, it changed so much. It made me realize, yes, there were parts that weren't necessarily my fault, but if I owned up for my side of the street and worked on keeping it clean, things got that much better, even if the other person wasn't willing to do anything for their side of the street. So it comes back to the more I can do for me, the better I become. So it's almost like, why would you not want to?
Exactly. Taking personal accountability is like the biggest step in moving forward with anything that goes wrong in our lives. You got to be able to take that mirror and look at yourself and go, hey, what am I doing here? And you might not even actually be doing anything, but there's always something that you can learn from reflecting on yourself in any given situation. When pro riders go and win, they self-reflect, they look back, they go, all right, what could I do to get better? Where could I be faster? Was there something, what did I do here to put myself in a position to block that path, block that other rider from passing me? When Jeremy was here at the Ridge, I read in his blog how he was battling with AJ and a couple other riders, and there was this back and forth, and that's his self-reflection. That's him going, all right, I did better than what we thought we were going to do here, but I want to learn from this. His way of reflecting on it is to put it down in words. And any of our viewers, go to the Remix Racing Project's website and check out Jeremy's blog. There is your best way to be able to get into the mind of a pro rider and what they're thinking. It is incredible.
I appreciate you mentioning that. We actually just posted my these, I don't know, I call them race reports. They're 18 to 20 page stories, and they really are reflections. And I really I first started writing them. I have a little granddaughter, And I first started writing these stories because I wanted to make sure that when she's old enough, she's getting to that age now where we can talk about it. She's come to the track, but where I could share these experiences with her. And also, so when I'm too old to do it, I can kind of reflect back on, these amazing experiences that I've had on the track and with the people in this community. But it just became a thing that I started doing. And we just posted the last one that I wrote for the 2025 Moto America season. It was from Mid-Ohio. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of what's going on inside the helmet. So whether you're just curious to know what happened, what goes on inside the head of a racer's, a racer, during the highs and lows of racing, or if you are one and you want to see whether or not this is kind of pervasive and it's something that happens with all of us, because I don't know how unique it is. I imagine that it's fairly common that I can have a perfect race and win a race, and what I'm going to focus on is where could I, like you said, where could I have gone faster? Where did I make that mistake? How could I have done it cleaner? And Mid-Ohio ended on a really sour note. It wasn't all bad. It was, I mean, if I wanted to just focus on the highs, on the good stuff, there was so much to choose from. But I'm a sentimental romantic, and so the ending is always the most important part of the story. And I actually, consistent with what we've already been talking about here today, the three of us, is that I actually comment. This is a little bit of a spoiler alert if you decide to read it, but on that a race has a checker flag, right? There's a finish to that race. But if you're a racer, then there's always going to be another race. And I say that having close friends who will never be able to race again because of something that happened to them, either on the racetrack or whatever, but they find some way to keep writing the story, right? So a chapter ends, and so you start writing the next one. You finish the last chapter of one book, and you start working on the next one. I mean, whatever metaphor or analogy you want to use. Um, but yeah, I really hope that people go and check out those race reports. And yeah, you can find it on the remixracingproject.org or remixrecovery.org. It takes you to the same place. And you can go to Jeremy's race reports. And right now what's posted are the 4 reports from the 4 Moto America rounds that I did in 2025. And I'll take you on a ride. I think in each of them, I take you on a full lap around the track. But again, I really let you inside, kind of behind the curtain, what's going on inside my head. Again, both during the thrill of victory, but also the utter agony of defeat, fighting demons both on the track and after a race that didn't go my way or preparing for one, that kind of thing. So yeah, consistent with everything that we've been talking about so far on this episode.
Now, getting on into what we're like, this has been amazing insight. And this first question that I have here. So, do you feel more focused when you're riding? And why do you think that is?
I can tell you, I most of the time feel incredibly focused. You've heard me refer to this, and I didn't coin the term, but throttle therapy. One of the things that happens when you're racing, if you're doing it right, is you are just incredibly focused. You put all the noise out of your head, all of the drama, you keep it in the pit, or you leave it at home before you even come to the track. But when you're on that bike, you just don't have room to fill your headspace with anything but what I'm doing right now in this moment and what I need to do next. There's some racecraft that goes that's part of racing, where you're planning and plotting and paying attention to all kinds of things, that guy in front of you, and where he's faster, slower, and all this. But you really have to stay perfectly focused. Some of the worst, most careless mistakes I've ever made on a track is allowing myself, even for a moment, to get distracted. Either something catches my eye or some random thought pops into my head, which happens all the time when I'm off the track. I mean, that's, pretty much par for the course. But yeah, have to be completely and entirely focused. I think it's a skill that can be developed, but I also think that there's just something about what you're doing and what's at stake as you're doing it. What's at stake, what you're risking. It just requires the kind of focus and attention that most of the rest of life never pulls from you.
Yeah. And I've noticed that when I'm really focused on something like riding, that I'm able to process a lot of things really quickly. And that we can go and transfer that into our normal lives by finding that zen, that space, and where you're able to just open your mind up. And there for us motorcyclists, that is when you throw your leg over your bike, start it up, and you start going down the road, and you're focused. You're able to clear your mind. When you're on the racetrack, though, like, you have to be mentally clear to be able to stay ahead of the bike. And so being able to clear your mind, get rid of those demons is that takes a skill. And what do you do to prepare for that?
I'm glad you asked that. There are times where something happens before I get on the bike, and Shayna she'll check with me to make sure that I can safely get on the bike and be focused on the riding and not whatever is going on, whether I'm upset about something or, you know, distracted by something. I think what she's learned, and what I know about myself is that again, for me, it works as a type of therapeutic experience. Whatever else is going on, um, you know, it once I throw my leg over the bike, once I get on the track, especially in a race, um, it really does kind of almost automatically clear my head from anything else. And you mentioned Zen, right? Like you think about the Buddhist practice of mindfulness, and Sabrina kind of referred to it earlier without using that term. That idea that in so much of our lives, our minds tend to wander to places where, at the very least, we don't have any control, so we can't make any change or kind of navigate our life very effectively. Our minds might go into the past where we have a lot of regret and remorse. That's where a lot of like sadness and depression comes from, or might be projected into the future, this kind of anticipation about what might go wrong and whether we're going to be able to handle it. And that's where a lot of our anxiety and worry comes from. And then our minds also wander to other places and times, where we don't have any control, or wander into some kind of existential fantasy that, might be a nice little escape. But in none of those places or times do we actually have any control. And if there's any place that you need maximum control, it's spinning a motorcycle around a circuit at 150 miles an hour. And so that practice of mindfulness is really about grounding your mind into the present moment, here and now, right? And when you do that, that's where you have the most power, the most control. But like you had said, Tam, it's also the place where you can really make better decisions. You can do better analysis of the factors that you have to make choices about, and all of that. And you could do it more effectively and more quickly. And again, a motorcycle is a great place to have that kind of focus because it's so necessary. But again, I mean, this becomes a metaphor for what we do off the bike, or for people who never get on a bike also. Um, and so when we're having those, when we're feeling like we can't operate or function at our peak performance, or when we're feeling really distressed and feeling really lousy emotionally, one of the things that we can ask ourselves is, where is my mind? Right? Is my mind right here, right now, or is it in some place where I can't do anything about whatever's got me upset? Um, and we all have the ability to change our mind, but it's often those kinds of thoughts where our minds wander that has a kind of inertia, kind of becomes the default. And if you don't make a decision to bring your mind into the present moment, then the tendency is for it to wander again into places that don't serve you. And again, being on a motorcycle almost forces you to do that. But it is a skill that we can learn on and off the bike, to refocus, to change our mind, pay attention to where we have control, to notice the factors that we have to pay attention to in order to make better decisions, to stay fully present in this moment. And yeah, it sounds kind of woo woo and zen and whatever, but that, yeah, it works, man. It works. And we live it on a motorcycle, but we can learn to live it off the bike also.
Yeah. And Sabrina, do you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
So I come from a place of healthcare background, a lot of medical, both in my job and outside of my job. My boyfriend, we've been together 15 years. He's type 1 diabetic and is in kidney failure. So there are days where his sugars drop and we go into that same kind of tunnel vision that you get when you're on a motorcycle of I have a split second decision to make and I better make the right one. So there are often times that I have to pivot from that mindset of we need to get some life-saving medications on board and call 911 and get them here and go through everything and where he's at. And then I then have to get up and go to work. And, how do you pivot from there's nothing I can do? I gave the glucagon, I called 911, he's with the medical professionals. So how do you let go of that and then focus on your workday and the people that are now depending on you to get other tasks done? So that whole being present and being in the moment is such a huge benefit when you're able to tap into it. But there are times that when you can't tap into it, you're like, well, what do we do? And that's when you go into panic mode. And that's when no decision is made correctly. So when you're teetering between that emotional mindset where nothing's making sense and that completely emotionless state where you're just like fact only, you got to kind of teeter on that seesaw into the wise mind where you're like, I can make a good decision from a place of good intent as well as be present here and not focused on something that's not in front of me right now, not in my control, and I can still be here and be in control of what I have in front of me. So being able to kind of not necessarily compartmentalize, but if it's not something you can control, how do you, clear that out of the space? It's just extra baggage for the day. So do you carry that around and focus on it and let it take over your day? Or do you try to focus on the moment and enjoy it? Because if you don't, then it's taken away from you and you don't get that time back.
Yeah, I was thinking of what you're describing was like compartmentalizing, and there's what I do with multiple different things that I've got going on, from being at my normal job to doing this, being a dad, to managing other things in my life. I tend to go and compartmentalize based on what I'm doing, whether it's driving a semi truck down the road and making sure that I'm doing my job the way I'm supposed to doing the YouTube stuff, focus on that in that space, to being a dad, which that goes and trickles on through everything else, to being a husband, like for me. And I can see where compartmentalizing can go and make things, be bad at times. Because when I'm doing the YouTube stuff, I'm here at home typically, and my wife and my kids want my attention, but I'm so dead focused on what I'm doing that, like you said, you lose that time. So being able to balance those things out, and that can be really difficult. Jeremy, do you have anything to add in on that?
Which part?
Well, so for me, like this is something I struggle with. Is I do compartmentalize real hard to where I'll be so focused on a task that my wife will be talking to me sometimes and I'm so zoned in on what I'm doing. I don't even hear, and I feel horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the space and time, right? Like like we were just talking about, when I get on the bike, the compartment that I'm in is that one, right? Like I can't be thinking about, I can't do anything about, worry about anything else. But the rest of life, I don't know if it serves me as well to organize my life around compartments. I feel like our experience as humans is so complex, um, and I definitely have I definitely struggle with obsessive thinking, which is kind of, to put it simply, is overthinking about one thing, right? As opposed to kind of considering the context or the implications of that one thing on everything else, or on everything else on that one thing, or whatever. But I think life is so complex that if we're going to do it right, if we're going to do life right, if we're going to navigate it right, that we have to be careful, um, not to be so kind of immersed in one compartment, that we ignore the needs of those other important parts of our life. But I think we can carve out time, and we can carve out space where we just focus on that one thing, make that the priority, or maybe the exclusive compartment where we're gonna exist for a little bit. Um,
That's where
one of
most
the
people
things we're Yeah, exactly. In fact, Sabrina, I was thinking when you were talking about how, you do all the planning and preparation to give yourself the best shot of showing up to work on time, but you can't do that for everybody else. And sometimes uh, that means that they don't show up, and maybe you have to, pick up their work or whatever until they get there. And I think that's just the way life is. People who plan and prepare are probably pretty good at thinking about, this is what I need to be focused on right now. But what do I need to be ready for next? And what about tomorrow? And what's coming up next week and next month, and that kind of thing. Um, and I think that's a really valuable skill. It might even be a character trait. But I don't know that it's as common as I would really like it to be.
and time management is something that most people don't think about because it takes time. And a skill that has saved me multiple times is 10 minutes today is going to save me an hour tomorrow. So
Yeah.
I take 10 minutes today to think about, what do I have to do tomorrow, and get myself set up for it. And Monday through Friday, I'm scheduled down to the hour. Everything has a time and a place. Granted, there is room for error. You have to bank for flexibility. But on the weekends, unless it's like a scheduled football game or meeting, nothing goes according to a timetable. The weekend is where time stands still. There is no clock to follow. You just immerse yourself and have fun. During the week, that's when you stick to the schedule and make sure that everything is, as by the timetable as you can keep it within reason. But also understand that hiccups happen. You just got to be flexible. And, today we were 5 minutes late to the game. Oh well, we got there when we got there. I would rather show up alive and 5 minutes late than blasting through red lights because I'm panicking that we're going to be the one late kid to the field. Oh well, coach can yell at me. I don't care. I can't help the people in front of me that don't drive the speed limit.
Good point.
So, but being able to take accountability, and you see it online, you see the motorcyclist going and blasting somebody's mirror off the car because the car pulled out in front of them. But being able to just let that go. Like, things are gonna happen during your day, during your ride. Slow down, buy yourself some time, and move on. Things are going to happen. You're not going to be able to control everything that goes on during your day, and staying in that positive mindset. Like, you can't allow every little thing to go and really ruin your day. So now the next question here is, now Mike and I next year, we're planning on hitting the track. We want to go racing, and that is something that we are really, really hyped up about. But one of the things that we need to be able to do and learn is being able to center ourselves before getting on the bike, getting on the track. So how can new riders learn to center themselves mentally before going out on track? And then I'll loop this back to street riding, and then we'll have Sabrina go and see about tying this all together for if you're not a rider.
What a great question. I don't know that what I do to center myself will necessarily work for everybody else, but I can tell you, one of the things that, especially if you're racing on a track that you've ridden multiple times, like so many times that right now you could close your eyes and you could do a lap, right? You could do. I remember reading once that Jorge Lorenzo, he could do a lap in his mind, and every time he would cross the start finish, he would tap the floor and they would time him. And in his mind, he would visualize every single turn, where his braking markers, where he would lean, where he'd get on the throttle and everything else. And when he crossed the start finish, he would tap the floor and they were timing him. And he was within, like, I don't know, hundreds, thousandths of a second of his actual lap times, right? That he was already visualizing what he's done so many times that it just becomes routine. And I've done that. I've practiced that. And it's a great way to kind of get on the bike when there's nothing at stake yet beforehand and get your mind ready to be going at those speeds. And so that's one thing. If you're on a track that you've been on tens, hundreds of times, is close your eyes and do a bunch of laps before you go out, right before you go out. And then I think it's also, a lot of us, we've developed these pre-race routines. And I mean, there are so many, and some of them are almost kind of OCD, superstitious kind of things, and some of them actually are contributing to getting ready. I have a stretching routine that I do, right? So how I stretch my body and get ready, but it's also very meditative. And if I can find a space, like if it's going to be in the RV or something, everybody knows to clear out, just give me that space. Or if it's going to be in the pit, everybody gets out of my way, and I go through my routine and I do the same thing every single time. It grounds me, it gets me ready to do what's going to come next, because I've done that right before what comes next countless times. One of the stretches that I learned at a riding camp years ago were eyeball stretches. And I know that when I'm doing them in public, I look really weird because I'm rolling my eyes and I'm stretching for peripheral vision and looking way up and way down and all this kind of stuff. And then I'm looking out at distance and then looking up close so that my eyes can move. Anyway, so I do these stretches and I do them in a very ritualistic kind of routine. And the guy who at this riding camp who taught me these eye stretches said this is what baseball players do to prepare to go up to the plate and get ready to hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, where they can actually see the seams of the baseball as it's coming at them at 90 to 100 miles an hour. Because if you think about it, when we're on the bike doing 150, 160 miles an hour, that turn is coming at us faster than fast pitch in Major League Baseball. But anyway, so, and then, of course, when you get ready to get on the bike, a lot of us develop our routines that become so familiar that they can be really soothing and grounding and centering and comforting. The order that we put our helmet and gloves on. Do we touch certain parts of the bike? Do we walk around our bike and do an inspection, even if we have a team that made sure that it was safe and set up? Do we do our own just to make sure that when we're on it, we're never second guessing anything while we're actually in the middle of a race? So anyway, those are some things that I suggest. Is, like I said, you can visualize doing a couple laps, and you can also develop a routine that you do, like I said, the exact same way every single time before you go out. You can practice it before you go out on the track for track days, so that it translates into what you're doing for your very first race, and then keep it up and make adjustments as you need to. But those routines are really great ways to kind of center and ground yourself, and also let your brain and your body know what you're about to do, to get it ready to go into, like we were just talking about, this is a time where I'm about to go into a compartment where nothing else in my life for the next, however many laps or the next 20 minutes or whatever, that this is the only thing that I'm going to be doing and focused on.
Yeah, no, that's great. So for like street riders, the best way to go and center your mind around riding is making sure that you're prepared. Um, and this comes into motorcycle safety too, is you want to make sure that you're mentally ready to get on the bike. You don't want to be mad. You don't want to be overly sad. You want to be level. And one of the best ways to do that is to make sure that you're prepared, whether that's with your gear, making sure the bike's ready, your tires are pumped, you got fuel, you got oil, your brakes are set up right. And the last ride could have been 10 minutes ago. You're about ready to get on the bike again. You got to recenter yourself, and being able to do your pre, making sure that you do your pre-ride check is key. Because the last thing you want is find out that you got a hole in your tire, right? Or that you're leaking oil or coolant or whatever, or that you've got a pocket open on your jacket and your phone's about ready to yeet itself down the road. So going through and making sure that everything is set up that way, you're not sitting there thinking about it while you're doing 60 miles an hour down the road, whether it's by yourself or with during a group ride. Because then your focus is going to be on that. Your focus isn't going to be on what's going on in front of you or next to you. You're going to be thinking about whatever. So make sure you know where you're going, whether it's set up your GPS or think about the route that you're about ready to take before you even get on the bike, whether that's with the GPS or without. And then that's one of the things that I do when I'm driving a semi truck, even if it's somewhere where I've been to before. I'm thinking about the route that I'm going beforehand. I know every street that I'm going to be going on, what the speeds are and what I'm pulling. And I do the same thing when I get on the bike. I'm looking at I make sure that my backpack's tight, all my pockets are shut, my jacket, all my zippers are done, and everything is where it needs to be. That way, all I'm focusing on is where I'm going and what I'm doing. And that's what I do to center myself, because every time that I've ever gone and hopped on a bike without doing these things, I'm a little frazzled. Like I'm sitting there, I'm checking myself. I'm like, oh, did I do this? And the same goes with when I'm, driving at work. I've got so many things. I do a mental checklist. And if I don't do that mental checklist mentally, I'm not in it. And that's when mistakes can happen. And so now we're on to you, Sabrina. Tie this all in for us.
Yeah, I would say that a mental preparation before anything is key, because if you're not mentally prepared going into something, you're not present. You're not focused on the objective. And those, like you said, those are the moments when accidents happen, mistakes get made, and those are sometimes things you can't get back. Sometimes they are, but 9 times out of 10, do you want to risk that chance? So for me, I have a routine in the morning before I take my kid to school, before we even leave the house. And if something in that routine gets thrown off, we kind of have to recenter, okay, before we move on, because we're either going to let it throw a wrench in our day, or we're going to let the wrench fall into the toolbox and we'll place it where it needs to go and get reorganized and then get moving. So it's kind of a way to prepare for stuff to go wrong. For me, when I get to work probably 15 minutes earlier than I'm supposed to every day, because I live 30 minutes from where I work. So I'm anticipating there might be an accident, there might be traffic. If I get there 5 minutes late because of an accident, I'm already frazzled, I'm already in a bad mood, and I'm already, starting my day off in a negative way. If I'm there early and I got all my stuff put down before anybody else came in and I'm already ready to go by the time everybody else comes into the office, I feel already productive and like I'm ready to go, while the person next to me is still putting her lipstick on, for the next 5 minutes and tinkering with stuff at her desk. I'm ready for whoever's coming into my office walking in. because I want to not be in that frazzled state of mind where I'm playing catch up. If I'm playing catch up all day long, I don't ever feel like I'm actually.
All right. Well, so we're going to be wrapping it up here real soon in like the next couple minutes. Jeremy, so while you're not able to ride right now, what are you doing to stay locked in?
There's so much. I mean, there is so much preparation that goes on. You know, people think the season starts at the beginning of March when we do round one at Daytona, but the season started already. The calendar for 2026 was published about a month ago in September, and a little over a month ago. And that's really when the season starts, if not a little bit before that. So all of the planning and preparation, getting all of our sponsorships together, getting new sponsors. If any of your listeners are looking to come partner with Remix Racing and everything that we do and everything that we represent, you know, please reach out. I've gone to some of the races and track days to support other riders and to support the clubs. At the final race of my local club, I went and I worked one of the corners and threw flags so I could support the club in that way since I couldn't ride. I am doing what I can to stay healthy. I'm still, you know, focusing on nutrition and exercise to the extent that I can with my injuries. So getting the bike, the body, and all the planning ready. And then trying to stay mentally focused. All the stuff we've been talking about for the last hour and a half is something that I can do whether my body is healthy or not, right? Is how do I keep my mind healthy? And you know, I think most people know this, but it is absolutely true that without mental health, there is no health.
Exactly.
Right? So while my body's broken, I can keep my mind healthy. Keep focused on what I need to do to keep moving forward. Always figure out how can I help others when I'm not able to do what I want to do for me. Being of service to others is a really big part. It's been a big part of my recovery journey, and it's a big part of the way I live my life. And so that's what we've been doing. One thing I want to just put out a really quick plug for any of your viewers or listeners that are as impressed by Sabrina from this podcast as I always have been. She's going to be launching a Remix Recovery Zoom group 2 Mondays from now. It'll be every Monday from 6 p.m. to 7:30 Pacific Standard Time via Zoom on Mondays, starting next Monday, the 10th. So not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow. And she'll be operating that group as a peer facilitator. And it's for anybody who struggles with mental health or substance use issues. You don't have to find the problem in a particular way or have a specific plan about what you want to do about it. You can love motorcycles. You can know nothing about motorcycles or anywhere in between. But I've also been working with Sabrina and our partner, Jenny, getting that together. So even when I can't ride, the way my life is, I've got plenty of other things that I'm still able to kind of focus on and kind of throw myself into. And, like I said, that's really good for my mental health. And without it, the rest of it won't matter anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody check that out. That is a great resource because you don't have to be there physically. Just hop on the Zoom call.
And the link will be on our website. So the remixracingproject.org or remixrecovery.org, you can find the link. And again, starting on the 10th, it'll be every Monday, 6 p.m. to 7:30 via Zoom Pacific Standard Time. And so we're hoping to get folks to log in all across the country. So you'd be up a little later if you're on the East Coast. But if you're watching this and you can find us there, please join Sabrina for that group, her and her partner, Jenny.
Yeah. And so for everybody who's not watching this live, that link will be down in the description. So now, are you doing anything different on the bike itself for our viewers that are really into what a Moto America bike? Like, are you making any changes from last year to this year on it's a Yamaha, the
Yamaha MT-09. I know it's not a Ducati, but it is red.
I like it. It is a gorgeous bike, and I don't care what you ride.
Yeah, well, so those of you who are familiar with my bike from 2025 season know that it's a MT09, which is, you know, the 3-cylinder kind of 899, I think, cc's. But it's got an XSR tank, R9 tail, tracer swing arm, which is a little longer than the MT09 stock. There's some other race goodies on there, and of course we upgrade the suspensions, Öhlins front and rear, and damper, and all kinds of stuff. Got our Woodcraft rear sets, and got a quick turn throttle that TST built for me, and got you know. Anyways, it was a bike that came out of the crate, and before I put it on the track, it was already no longer the kind of bike you would be able to ride on the street in so many ways. We are doing some upgrades this year. I'm going to keep it kind of close to the vest. Some of this stuff is kind of team secrets, but let's just put it this way. The MT09, along with the introduction of the R9 last year, went through a lot of racing development. And my builder, Bryce Prince, or Bryce Cornbow, who raced in Superbike and Superstock 1000 last year and owns BPR, which is Bryce Prince Racing, and also has been my builder for the last couple of years. You know, he's really been doing a lot of development for this bike. And so, yeah, so we're doing some upgrades, you know, and refreshing the bike. So it's gonna, it was a really fantastic performer in its first season. I hope to get even a little bit more out of it in this next season. But like I said, we got to keep some secrets and surprises close to the vest.
Yeah, no, I was just curious, you know. I got to ask those motorcycle questions.
Yes, sir.
You know, I'm super interested in what goes on with that, and then with our builds that we're looking to do for our channel to get ready for racing. We're gonna be building some Ducati Panigale V2s, and we're looking at the 2025 models if we can get our hands on some of those, but. We're going to wrap it up. I want to say thank you to Sabrina for coming and joining us. And obviously, Jeremy, it's always a pleasure. So like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next ride.